They called her a gold digger. They mocked her shoes, her silence, and her skin, but nothing could prepare them for what she revealed at the altar. The sun cast a soft, golden glow across the rolling hills of the vineyard, where rows of grapevines swayed gently in the breeze. A stately white gazebo stood at the center of the ceremony space, adorned with cascading wisteria and ivory roses. Servers moved like shadows between tables, placing name cards and crystal flutes with quiet precision. Nia Brooks stepped onto the cobblestone terrace in a flowy emerald green dress that moved like silk in the wind. Her natural curls framed her face elegantly, and her gold hoop earrings glinted each time the light hit them. She held her shoulders high, not out of pride, but from practice. Years of walking into rooms that weren't built for her had taught her that posture could be armor. As she crossed the lawn, the buzz of polite conversation dipped, just enough to notice. She must have seen his bank account before the ring. Give it a year, 2 if she keeps quiet. Nia didn't flinch. Her heels clicked purposefully against the stone, a rhythm as steady as her heartbeat. She smiled at the wedding coordinator, nodded at the florist. She had no need to guess where the whispers came from. Ethan's family was dressed in varying shades of disapproval, even if they wore pearls and Rolexes to mask it. Ethan Carter emerged from the far end of the lawn, looking every bit the golden boy, tall, sandy-haired, dressed in tailored slacks, and a linen button-up that spoke of generational ease. His eyes lit up when he saw her. "There you are," he whispered, wrapping an arm gently around her waist. "You look amazing." Nia smiled, and it reached her eyes. "So do you." But she could feel the weight of his family's stares even as he leaned in. She caught a glimpse of his mother, Margaret Carter, fanning herself with a wedding program. Her lips pursed like she'd tasted something sour. Beside her, Ethan's sister leaned in to whisper something, barely hiding a smirk. "Don't let it get to you," Ethan said, noticing her gaze drift. "They just need time." Nia raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Time wasn't the issue. It never had been. She'd seen that look too many times in too many rooms. It wasn't new. It was rehearsed. They made their way to the seating chart, where the planner was fretting over table placements. Nia offered a helpful suggestion, gently shifting 2 names to avoid seating a feuding uncle next to a bitter ex-wife. The planner blinked, surprised. "Oh, thank you, that actually helps a lot." Margaret passed by just in time to hear, and her eyebrows arched. "How efficient," she said with a brittle smile. "You're quite good at logistics." "Occupational hazard," Nia replied lightly. "I run a tech firm." There it was again, that flicker of doubt behind Margaret's eyes. Like she couldn't quite tell whether Nia was joking or bragging. Ethan pulled Nia away toward the ceremony space, whispering, "Sorry, she's just stressed." "I'm not," Nia said gently. "Let her be." Still, as they rehearsed their slow walk down the aisle, hand in hand, Nia's eyes scanned the rows of white folding chairs. Each one would be filled tomorrow by people who'd already decided who she was and who she wasn't. But Nia had learned something long ago. You don't need to convince people who aren't listening. You just need to stay steady long enough for the truth to speak for itself. And so she did, with quiet grace, with her head held high. Because she wasn't there to impress the Carters. She was there to marry Ethan, and that, she reminded herself, was enough. The clink of wine glasses and the soft rustle of tablecloths danced through the vineyard's open-air pavilion, but Nia barely heard any of it. Her eyes followed the curves of the landscape, hills dipped in sunlight, birds tracing arcs across, the wide blue sky. It was beautiful, and strangely, a little unreal. But Nia Brooks had long known that beauty didn't always equal peace. She walked quietly toward the side garden to clear her head, her heels sinking slightly into the grass. Just beyond the trimmed hedge, she heard voices, hushed but sharp enough to cut through the hum of the breeze. "You really think she loves him?" a voice asked. Aubrey, Ethan's sister. There was a bitter laugh. "Please, she probably Googled him before their first date. Now she's marrying into a trust fund." Another voice, softer, maybe a cousin, murmured something in agreement. Nia paused, not out of surprise, but out of weariness. That same tired script, dressed in a new location, spoken with different voices but the same shallow assumptions. She turned around before they saw her, smoothing the front of her dress as she walked back toward the main tent. Let them talk. They didn't know her story. They didn't know the late nights spent coding alone in a dimly lit one-bedroom apartment, the heat turned off in winter to keep her servers running. They didn't know about the rejections, the not a fit, the we're looking for someone with a different background, the your idea isn't scalable. They didn't know that after being laughed out of 4 investor meetings, she'd built her first app anyway, that it started with $312 in her account and grew, slowly, then all at once, until she was employing others, mostly women, mostly people of color, creating space where none had been offered to her. They didn't know that she owned a brownstone in Brooklyn and paid off her brother's college tuition twice, once when he dropped out and once when he went back. And they didn't need to know. Not yet. Nia had made a conscious decision early in her relationship with Ethan. She wouldn't lead with her success, not because she was ashamed, but because she wanted to be seen, not as a headline, not as a resume, but as a woman worth loving, for who she was, not for the number in her bank account. So when Ethan brought her home for the first time and his mother made a polite but pointed remark about ambitious women, Nia smiled and nodded. When his sister asked what kind of work she did and responded with a dry, "Oh, startups," she let it go. Let them believe what they wanted. She wasn't interested in performing wealth for approval. She wanted to build something real, with Ethan. Back in the rehearsal space, Ethan caught her eye. He was laughing with one of his groomsmen, but when he saw her expression, his brow furrowed. "You okay?" "Of course," Nia said smoothly. "Just thinking about centerpieces." He grinned. "You're impossible to read sometimes." "That's the point," she almost said. Instead, she kissed him on the cheek and said, "Good." As the afternoon unfolded, Nia kept her head high, but the words lingered like a stain in the air. "She's marrying into a trust fund. Funny how the world could flip your truth into their fiction." But Nia had lived long enough to know, truth doesn't need defending. It needs revealing. And when the moment came, her story would speak louder than any whisper behind her back. The vineyard had shifted from soft rehearsal energy to full wedding mode. Linen-draped tables shimmered under golden afternoon light, and floral arrangements the size of small trees were wheeled into place. But behind the curated elegance, quiet current of unease tugged beneath the surface, one Nia could feel more than explain. She noticed it in the way the wedding planner, Grace, approached her. Not flustered, not rude, but careful. Grace was a seasoned professional, her eyes sharp behind her soft tone. "Miss Brooks," she said, glancing around before lowering her voice. "Can I speak to you for just a moment?" They stepped into the shaded hallway that led to the venue's main office. Grace hesitated before continuing. "I just wanted to say thank you again for your clarity. The Carter family has had a few last-minute additions. Live-string quartet, imported champagne, an ice sculpture, which, I should say, is quite literally melting our budget." Nia blinked. "They added all that?" "Yes, and they haven't responded to our invoices. I didn't want to bother you with it, but I also didn't want you blindsided." For a moment, Nia stood frozen, not with shock, but with restraint. The kind she'd mastered long ago in boardrooms where men assumed she was the assistant, not the founder. The kind she used now, because this wasn't just about flowers or music. It was about control, optics, power. She inhaled slowly. "Can see the balance?" Grace pulled out a tablet. The number made Nia's stomach clench, but she nodded. "I'll cover it." Grace blinked. Are you sure? I mean, the Carters?" Nia opened her clutch and removed a sleek business card. "NB Digital Solutions. Nia Brooks, founder and CEO. I'd prefer discretion," she said, handing it over along with her signature. "No one needs to know." Grace, to her credit, didn't gawk. She only nodded once, tight and respectful. Nia walked out of the office, with the same poise she always carried. But this time, someone saw her. Across the courtyard, perched beneath a pergola, Ethan's cousin Trevor watched with narrowed eyes. He leaned slightly forward, wine glass dangling from his fingers, eyebrows raised. Later that evening, whispers began again. Only now, they had a sharper edge. She was in the office for 20 minutes. You think she's prepaying before the prenup kicks in. Trevor's voice slid easily through the cocktail crowd. I mean, come on, wouldn't you? If you knew you had a time limit. By the time the sun dipped low behind the vineyard hills, half a dozen relatives were murmuring the same theory. She's pushing for the wedding before Ethan wakes up and locks it down legally. Nia, meanwhile, was adjusting the placement of candles on the sweetheart table, unaware that the cost of grace, once again, was being misread as guilt. But there was one thing no one knew yet. She didn't just pay the bill, she'd paid it with the earnings, from a company they'd never even Googled. And when the truth came, it would not arrive with permission. It would arrive with power. The rehearsal dinner was held under a canopy of fairy lights and grapevines, with laughter flowing as freely as the wine. But for Nia, the air felt thinner than usual, each smile from Ethan's relatives slightly too stiff, each glance a touch too lingering. She'd chosen her dress carefully, ivory silk, simple lines, not showy but elegant. And yet, no matter how she softened her tone or bowed her shoulders, she could still feel the undercurrent. She didn't belong. That truth crystallized when Ethan's mother, Diane, gently touched Nia's elbow and gestured toward the garden path. Walk with me, dear? Her voice was honeyed. Her grip was steel. They strolled past the hedges in silence until the music from the dinner faded behind them. Diane finally stopped under an arch of climbing roses, turned, and looked Nia dead in the eye. I'll be blunt, she said, her tone sharpened now that they were out of earshot. We've seen this before, women who see a good man and latch on. And I'll tell you this plainly, we're not stupid. We know what women like you want. Nia felt the sting, not just from the implication, but from the certainty with which it was delivered. No hesitation, no shame. Just entitlement wrapped in pearls. But Nia didn't flinch. She looked Diane square in the face, calm and unwavering. The only thing I've ever wanted, she said slowly, is respect. Diane blinked. Just once, as if she'd been slapped by civility itself. Without another word, Nia turned and walked back toward the tent, the sound of her heels tapping confidently on the stone path. Diane remained frozen in place, unsure if she'd just delivered a warning or received one. Back under the canopy, Ethan was laughing with his brother, but something in his posture shifted when he spotted Nia's expression. He excused himself and walked over to her, placing a hand lightly on her lower back. You okay? He asked gently. Nia nodded, the smile she offered just a shade too perfect. But Ethan wasn't convinced. He had felt it for days now. The way conversations hushed when Nia entered the room, the passive comments dressed as jokes, the way his mother said, that girl, instead of her name. He'd brushed it off before. But now, something was different. Nia seemed tired, not physically, but soul-tired, and that rattled him more than he wanted to admit. He watched her greet one of his cousins with grace and warmth, but her eyes flicked to his, just for a second. And in that second, Ethan saw something unspoken. Do you see me? Or are you still pretending not to? That night, as guests clinked champagne flutes and posed for sunset selfies, two storms brewed silently, one in the sky above, and one between the couple no one truly thought would last. But neither storm would break just yet. Not until the envelope. Not until the truth. The wedding morning dawned clear, the vineyard kissed by golden sunlight and dew. Birds chirped gently, and the staff buzzed through the grounds, putting finishing touches on tables dressed in cream linens and soft blush roses. Everything looked perfect, as it should. After all, this was a Carter wedding, at least that's what everyone thought. Ethan stood near the veranda in a tailored navy suit, adjusting his cufflinks with nervous energy. He wasn't sure if it was the vows, the pressure, or the quiet distance in Nia's eyes the night before, but something tugged at him just beneath the surface. He was about to ask the coordinator where Nia was when the sudden rumble of a delivery truck rolled across the gravel drive. Heads turned, staff paused. A sleek black flatbed came into view. On it sat a gleaming, fully restored 1968 Mustang convertible in cherry red, ribbon tied across the hood. Ethan's jaw dropped. A small crowd formed as the driver stepped down, holding a clipboard and a card. He walked straight up to Ethan. "You Ethan Carter?" Ethan nodded, still staring at the car. "Delivery from Nia Brooks. Says here this is your wedding gift." The man handed him the envelope. Ethan opened it slowly. Inside, a handwritten note, in Nia's elegant script. "For every moment you stood beside me, even when it was hard. I remembered you once said this was your dream car. I hope today is your dream day too. Nia." He was still processing the words when the wedding coordinator approached, eyes wide, glancing between the car and the clipboard she held. "Mr. Carter," she said cautiously, "should I add this to the Carter family's final invoice?" Ethan blinked. "The final what?" "The invoice," she said again, confused. "Venue rental, catering, lodging for out-of-town guests, the band, decor, floral installations, everything. This is listed under Ms. Brooks's company account. We assumed she was simply handling the coordination on your behalf." There was a pause, like the earth had briefly stopped spinning. Ethan shook his head slowly. "Wait, you're saying she paid for all of it?" The coordinator nodded. "In full. Last week." From the edge of the crowd, Ethan's mother froze mid-step. His father's eyebrows furrowed in disbelief. The Carter cousins fell silent, one of them holding a mimosa that suddenly didn't feel celebratory anymore. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. All the whispers about Nia being a gold digger, all the side-eyes, all the assumptions. And she had funded the entire wedding, quietly, without asking for credit, without making a scene. No announcements, no grand reveal, just quiet grace. He stared down at the note again. She remembered his dream car. She never mentioned the price. He turned toward the bridal suite, eyes scanning for her, heart thudding. This woman, the one his family dismissed with smug glances and whispered doubts, had just rewritten everything, not with confrontation, but with integrity. And now, standing there beside the car of his dreams, he realized something he should have known all along. She had never been trying to prove her worth. She was just being herself. And that, Ethan finally understood, was worth more than anything his family could ever afford. The reception was in full bloom. Golden light filtered through the canopy of vines as the sun began its slow descent beyond the hills. Glasses clinked, laughter echoed, and the air buzzed with the scent of fresh roses and rosemary. Every table glowed under strings of soft amber lights, and the band played a smooth, jazzy tune in the background. But when Ethan stood and tapped his glass, the room quieted. He looked out over the guests, family, friends, colleagues, and then, to Nia, radiant in her sleek ivory gown, her posture calm but unreadable. He cleared his throat. "Most of you know me as someone who wears his heart a little too openly," he began, voice shaky. "I've never been great at hiding my feelings, and today, I couldn't hide my pride if I tried." He glanced at Nia. "This woman, my wife, is everything I hoped for in a partner. Strong, kind, smarter than I'll ever be. And I've come to realize she's also a hell of a lot more gracious than I deserve." There were a few chuckles, a few awkward glances. Ethan paused, taking a slow breath. "I also know some people in this room made assumptions about her, about us, and I stayed quiet when I should have spoken louder." He turned fully toward Nia now, eyes glassy. "Thank you for loving me despite all of it. Thank you for showing the world what grace really looks like." He lifted his glass. "To Nia." Applause followed, soft but growing. Then Ethan placed the microphone on the table in front of her. All eyes turned. Nia didn't stand. She sat there, elegant and poised, one hand resting lightly on her wine glass. She took a breath, then leaned into the mic. When people think they know your story, she said, her voice steady and clear, sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let the truth introduce itself. A beat of silence. Even the servers paused. I didn't come into this marriage to prove anything. I didn't fund this wedding for validation. I did it because love, real love, doesn't keep score. It builds. She smiled softly. Thank you all for being here. I hope what you witnessed today wasn't just a wedding, but a reminder that respect isn't owed by lineage. It's earned by character. Then she set the mic down. No dramatic exit. No pointed stares, just quiet power. The room was still. Then someone clapped. Then another. And suddenly, a wave of applause erupted. Some hesitant, some wholehearted. A few faces flushed with shame. Others nodded in admiration. Ethan took her hand under the table. In that moment, Naya didn't just reclaim her narrative. She redefined it, with poise, with truth, and with the kind of silence that speaks louder than any defense ever could. The reception lingered into twilight. The band now played softer tunes, the kind that settled into the bones and made people reflective. Candles flickered on the tables. Champagne flutes were half drained. Conversations softened. But something else had shifted, less tangible than lighting or music. It was in the air, in the glances, in the silences. Naya sat beside Ethan, their fingers laced tightly beneath the tablecloth. For the first time that day, she allowed herself a long breath, her shoulders releasing a tension she hadn't fully realized she was carrying. She didn't smile. Not yet. But the storm in her chest had passed. People began approaching her. Not all at once and not with ease. The first was Ethan's cousin Laurel. She was always polished, always proper, the kind who never wrinkled. And yet now, her face flushed. With discomfort, her fingers wringing her clutch. I didn't know, she murmured. I'm sorry, Nia. I shouldn't have assumed. Nia tilted her head, eyes calm. Most people don't know what they're assuming. That's the danger. In it. Laurel nodded quickly, then stepped away. Others followed. Ethan's younger brother stammering through a compliment about the restored car. His aunt saying she misjudged, though she never said how. Some family members merely gave her a nod, eyes lowered, as if the applause from earlier had baptized them into clarity. And some said nothing at all, but their avoidance was no longer smug. It was sheepish. But it was Ethan's father who truly startled her. He wasn't a man prone to softness. His presence was commanding, his opinions rarely questioned, his wealth worn like an inherited crown. And yet now, he approached with none of that. May I? He asked, gesturing to a quiet corner of the patio. Nia stood slowly, following him, a few steps away. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time without the filter of expectation or stereotype. You've got more class than this family deserves, he said quietly. And more patience than I'd ever have shown us. She studied him, unsure if this was a rare moment of honesty or just his version of surrender. He continued, Thank you. For staying. For not walking out when we gave you every reason to, Naya. Said nothing for a moment, then. I stayed because I love your son, not because I needed your approval. He gave a small nod. Still, you earned my respect. Back at the table, Ethan watched her, eyes full, smile soft. When she returned, he stood, wrapped his arms around her waist, and kissed her forehead. I'm sorry for every time I didn't speak up sooner. She rested her hand on his chest. You're speaking now. They stood there together as the night unfolded around them, not just as husband and wife, but as equals, finally seen clearly. And for the first time that day, Nia smiled. Not because they had won, but because the truth, quiet, steady, and undeniable, had spoken for her. The evening haze melted into dawn, casting soft gold over the hardwood floors of their sunlit home. Boxes from the wedding still sat unopened near the door, gift bags and ribbons lazily undone, champagne bottles half empty. But in the center of the living room stood Nia, quiet and focused, holding 2 pieces of paper that had shaped her journey in ways the world would never fully know. The first was aged now, its corners slightly curled. It was the inaugural invoice from her startup's launch day, the one she had scraped together her savings to cover, back when she slept on a mattress on the floor and ate canned soup for weeks to make payroll. The second, crisp and pristine, bore the heading of the Vineyard venue. Final wedding balance paid in full. She placed them side by side inside a dual frame. Not flashy, not boastful, just honest. Earned. Hers. As she hung the frame above her desk, sunlight hit the glass in just the right way. For a moment, the reflection of the words seemed to shimmer, like the quiet recognition of every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every moment she chose dignity over defiance. From the next room, she heard Ethan's laughter. It was unguarded, full of life. Then came the soft rhythm of his footsteps approaching behind her. "You really framed that?" he asked gently. Nia smiled without turning. "Yes. This one," she tapped the wedding invoice, "because it reminded me what people thought they knew about me." She turned and tapped the other. "And this one, because it reminds me of what I know about myself." Ethan kissed her cheek, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I'm proud of you," he said. She leaned into him, voice calm and steady. "Let them assume. Let them whisper. The truth doesn't need to shout." And that truth, as she had always known, was that a woman's worth couldn't be tallied by what she married into or what she flaunted. It lived in the foundations she laid brick by brick, in the rooms she built where others had only left doubt, in the legacy of showing up with grace when silence might have been easier. The camera lingers on the framed invoices. 2 chapters, 2 battles, 1 story. Not of taking, but of building, because assumptions are loud. But truth speaks in action, and for women like Nia, women underestimated, misread, whispered about, it speaks loudest when she simply keeps walking forward.